Have you ever been on a road trip and passed a sign that says, "Point of no return, next gas 200 miles"? You have to make a choice. Turn back or commit to the journey, knowing there's no easy way out. In 1833, the Texas colonists were at that exact point. They had one last chance to peacefully ask the Mexican government for what they wanted. One last chance to avoid a full-blown, bloody conflict. Get ready for the story of two conventions, one fateful letter, the imprisonment of a hero, and the rise of a tyrant who would unite all of Texas again. This is the story of the point of no return. If you're ready to see how diplomacy failed and revolution became the only option left, then make your declaration and hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like to show you stand with the cause of liberty. With things temporarily calm after the Anahuac disturbances, the colonists decided to get organized. They held two big meetings, the Convention of 1832 and the Convention of 1833, in the town of San Felipe de Austin. Delegates were sent from all over Texas. They were still trying to be good, loyal Mexican citizens. Their goal wasn't to declare independence, but to formally and professionally ask the government to fix their problems. They had a list of demands, or resolutions. First and foremost, they wanted the government to repeal the hated Law of April 6, 1830, and open the doors to American immigration again. Their biggest and boldest request was for Texas to be granted separate statehood from Coahuila. Texas was huge and had a unique Anglo population, and they felt they were being ignored by the state capital, which was hundreds of miles away in Saltillo. To prove they were serious, at the Convention of 1833, they even drafted a whole new state constitution for Texas, modeling it after the U.S. Constitution. A young, recent arrival to Texas was chosen to lead the committee, a tall, imposing man named Sam Houston. The conventions chose the most respected and experienced diplomat they had to take their petitions to Mexico City, Stephen F. Austin. He was the one man they believed could get the job done peacefully. Austin set off on the long, 3-month journey. When he finally arrived, he found Mexico City in chaos. A cholera epidemic was raging, and the government was a revolving door of officials thanks to the political instability caused by Santa Anna. Austin waited for months, getting more and more frustrated. He managed to convince the government to repeal the ban on immigration, which was a huge win. But on the main issue, separate statehood for Texas, they wouldn't budge. Feeling desperate and angry, Austin wrote a letter to the leaders back in San Antonio. He told them to go ahead and start forming a new state government, even without official permission. It was a risky and, as it turns out, illegal thing to do.
The fate of Texas depends on itself, and not upon this government. All is uncertain, but we must be firm, and proceed to organize a local government for Texas, as a state of the Mexican Confederation.
Finally, Austin gave up and started his journey home. But his angry letter had been intercepted by the Mexican government. They saw it as an act of rebellion, as treason. In January 1834, Stephen F. Austin was arrested in Saltillo, taken back to Mexico City, and thrown into a dark, damp prison cell, without ever being charged with a crime. While Austin was wasting away in prison, the man the Texans had supported, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, was making his move. He had been elected president, claiming to be a Federalist who supported the Constitution of 1824. But it was all a lie. Santa Anna was no Federalist. He was a centralist. He didn't want power for the states. He wanted all the power for himself. In 1834, Santa Anna made his betrayal complete. He dissolved the Mexican Congress, threw out the Constitution of 1824, and declared himself the dictator of Mexico. He called himself the Napoleon of the West. This wasn't just an attack on the Texans. All across Mexico, states that believed in federalism were outraged. Rebellions broke out in several states, like Zacatecas. Santa Anna responded with brutal force. He marched his army to Zacatecas and crushed the rebellion, allowing his soldiers to ransack the city for 2 days. This was a message to anyone who dared to defy him, including the Texans. The news of Santa Anna's tyranny and his brutal actions in Zacatecas spread to Texas like wildfire. They now knew the man they had once hailed as a hero was, in fact, a monster, and a direct threat to their lives and their liberty. Back in Texas, Santa Anna's actions and Austin's imprisonment had split the colonists into 2 groups, the War Party and the Peace Party. The War Party was led by fiery young men like William B. Travis. They had lost all hope for a peaceful solution. They believed that Santa Anna was a tyrant and that the only answer was to fight for their rights, even if it meant declaring independence. The Peace Party was made up of older settlers and those with more established farms and businesses. They still hoped to avoid war. They argued that Texas wasn't ready to fight the entire Mexican army, and that they should remain loyal, at least for now. But as Santa Anna sent more troops into Texas to enforce his new centralized rule and collect customs duties, the situation grew more tense. Another conflict erupted at Anahuac, and this time, the colonists captured the Mexican fort. The War Party was gaining support. In August 1835, Stephen F. Austin was finally released from prison. After nearly 2 years of confinement, he was a changed man. The patient diplomat was gone, replaced by a determined revolutionary.
I have been silent for years, but the time has come to speak. There is no other remedy but to defend our rights, ourselves, and our country by force of arms. War is our only recourse. There is no other remedy. We must defend our rights or be slaves.
Austin's return and his powerful declaration that war was the only option united the colonists. The Peace Party's arguments for caution were swept away by the tide of revolution. The Texans called for one last great meeting, known as the Consultation, to be held in the fall of 1835. It was time to make a final decision. At the Consultation, they made it clear. They were loyal to the Mexican Constitution of 1824, not the dictator Santa Anna. They declared their right to resist his tyrannical government. They created a provisional or temporary government to lead them. And crucially, they appointed Sam Houston as the commander-in-chief of a new, professional Texan army. The time for militias was over. It was time for a real army. The choice had been made. The colonists had passed the point of no return. They were no longer just angry settlers. They were rebels on the verge of war. All they needed was a spark to ignite the flame. And that spark would come from a tiny town called Gonzales, over a dispute about a small 6-pound cannon. A cannon that the Mexican army was about to learn they couldn't have without a fight. What happens when the Mexican soldiers arrive to take the cannon? And how does the famous slogan, "Come and take it," become the rallying cry of the Texas Revolution? You'll have to join us for Part 4 to see the first shots of the war. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Now for today's question. Stephen F. Austin was arrested and jailed for over a year for writing a letter. What do you think is the most powerful way to protest peacefully when you feel your rights are being ignored? Let us know in the comments. Stand firm. Stand for what you believe in. And remember that sometimes the only path forward is the one you have to fight for. Until next time, stay curious.